Hello. Today's stress management tip is going to be about social media and limiting our social media use and more broadly our iPhone, smartphone use, devices, electronics in order to enhance our recovery and try to get our cognitive brains to actually slow down once in a while. The average American touches their phone 2,617 times each day. Each day. We spend 2.5 hours a day on average looking at our smartphones for various reasons. When we include TV, computers, the average person spends 11 hours of their day on some form of digital media. 1/3 of the population would rather give up sex than their smartphone. I think those are some pretty alarming statistics. So it's so serious that there are actual categories and categorizations now of various forms of social media and iPhone addiction or smartphone addiction. Nomophobia is the fear of losing touch with your smartphone. That can manifest in 4 ways. The first is anxiety about not being able to communicate with others, fear of not being able to connect to the outside world, fear of not being able to immediately access information, and a fear of losing comfort provided by smartphones. So why is this a problem? Smartphones, technology, social media is all supposed to make our lives better, right? Well, the problem is that we are no longer experiencing boredom. Now, boredom, I think we've all kind of been programmed to think is a bad thing, but it's actually a very necessary skill to have in order to let our brains reconnect and calm down and slow down and actually restore themselves so that our bodies can restore ourselves so that we can continue to do the things we love to do and not be fatigued all the time and have better connections with ourselves and the world. So boredom and our constant connection to smartphones means that we no longer learn how to calm or comfort or entertain ourselves without some kind of digital device. This is especially true for teenagers and the young adults that we're dealing with. They are just connected to their phones all the time, as we know, and they don't know how to be bored. And in fact, they get panicky if they're bored, right? So they don't look to books anymore. They're not going outside and playing anymore. It tends to lead to a lot of anxiety in them that they just don't understand how to be bored. And we're fortunate, most of us, in that we have lived in a time where there wasn't social media and there weren't smartphones, and we survived. And we know we can survive without being constantly connected to a device because we have, for some of us, more than half of our lives. So, but these younger kids don't know that. So we need to make sure that we are letting ourselves be bored sometimes. Our collective lack of boredom is causing crisis levels of mental fatigue. It's also making us just miserable people. We are more picky, we are more impatient, we are more distracted, we are more demanding of others, and insufferable, in other words. In addition, not allowing ourselves to be bored or let our minds wander and daydream is linked to depression, life distraction, the perception that life goes by quicker, and that we're actually missing the things that are right in front of us because we're so worried about what's going on our phones. As I've talked about before in some of the other videos, screen time and the light that's emitted from our smartphones and electronic devices impact our circadian rhythms at night. So our bodies are designed to go to sleep when it's dark and wake up when it's light. Those are our circadian rhythms. They're evolutionary. They have been with us forever. If you pay attention to your animals ever, you can see it in them pretty clearly. When it's light, they get up. When it's dark, they calm down. So when we stay up on our phones, that light that's emitted is actually interfering with our natural sleep cycles. So it's making our brains think it's still light and that we still need to be functioning and doing things. So it's prohibiting our ability to slow down, get to sleep, and relax. The light that's emitted also shuts down the production of melatonin that we naturally produce pursuant to our circadian rhythms. So again, we are having inability to fall asleep. We are not getting much quality sleep when we are sleeping, and we are spending less time in our REM sleep cycle, which is really, really important for building our memories and restoring our brain function and allowing our brains to relax. So there are also recent studies that in addition to impairing our sleep, that spending significant amounts of time on our smartphones and social media is impairing our athletic performance. So there's a recent study that showed that they had people look at their smartphones for about 30 minutes before they went to the gym and did their workouts. What these studies show is that even that amount of time fatigues our brains to an extent that it impairs our athletic performance and our perception of our athletic performance. So the findings from these studies were that weightlifters reported a higher perceived rate of exertion than they were actually working at. They estimated that they had fewer reps in reserve than they actually had. So in other words, they thought they had worked to their full potential and were maxing out their reps when they actually had more in their tank. They had more that they could do, but they had perceived themselves as being at the end of that rope. And then when doing front squats to failure, lifters who used social media before did 15% fewer squats than those who did not. So these are the same kind of people with the same kind of body types that should have been able to do more, but were cognitively or physically fatigued due to the social media use and perhaps other things, but they've really focused in on the controls in making this just about the social media use than they would have otherwise been. So those Gymstagrammers that we see, people on their phones in the gym, people recording every single workout, are maybe not doing themselves a whole lot of good. So of course, social media is not inherently bad. Our smartphones are not inherently bad. Some of us might think they are, but what we really want to look at is what is driving our use, especially of social media, as why are we using it as much as we are? And then so what we really want to do is look at the comparison between connection and comparison. Are we actually using social media to connect to other people in a positive way, or are we using it just to compare ourselves, get self-validation, or as a means to just hide out from the world? So what you want to ask yourself is, do you use social media for good? Are you actively engaging with other humans? Are you finding communities with similar interests? And I would add, engaging in those communities. Are you promoting worthwhile causes? And are you using it as an outlet for your creativity and expression? Or are you using it for social comparison, looking for validation by people, how many followers you have or people who like you, or as a means with just zoning out and avoiding the world? So how do we know if we are using social media and our phones in such a way as to be impairing our mental health and our social connections and just our overall physical health? What we want to do is think about what feelings we're experiencing when we are actually looking at our social media or after we are done with our social media. So when you review your social media accounts, do you feel positive about yourself? Do you feel more informed? Do you feel entertained? Do you feel motivated, inspired, and energized for change? Or are you experiencing fear of missing out? Are you feeling insecure, anxious, alone and isolated, angry? I would add into this. Sometimes we get angry, right? Demotivated and discouraged. Do you have trouble calibrating your expectations in real life to the life that you're seeing on this whatever social media form you're using? So what we want to do is we want to be very honest about that with ourselves, and we want to check in with our body. How is our body feeling? When I say somatically, that means what are we experiencing in our body when we are spending time on our social media, or right when we get off of our social media? Are we finding that we're holding our breath? Are we feeling tension in our shoulders? Are we feeling that our heart rate's increasing, or are we feeling just defeated and exhausted when we come off of our social media apps. So I've said this before and I've said it again. You probably picked it up from some of my other videos, but we really have to limit the amount of time we are spending on social media and our devices in general. The ways you can really work on doing that are just putting yourself on a schedule and really then seeing, so allow yourself to go on for half an hour in the morning, half an hour at night, and that's it, right? If you need it for your business purposes, like I sometimes do, I encourage you to think about what you're going to post ahead of time, get your post ready, go on and do it, and get off. That's my dog. She agrees. Get in and get out as fast as you can. And then use it again at another time of the day for your more social browsing or looking at other things. Don't use it necessarily as your best source of information. You can still get good information from books and reading papers, the newspaper, magazines, those kinds of things, as opposed to actually putting all of our energy into social media and getting all of our information from our smartphones. So finally, any questions, please send them to me. Again, I just want to remind you, if you're watching this and are over 40, at least over 40, we have survived without social media for most of our lives, and we can continue to survive without social media. So while it may sound hard and difficult to actually limit your use, it's not going to be once you actually do it. It's like everything else, just some consistency and some self-discipline, and you will, I guarantee you, you will see results very quickly in your overall state of mental health, your inspiration to do other things, your time you're getting outside, your connections with your family and friends. It's all going to improve if you just put some limitations on yourself and really are honest with yourself about how social media is impacting you. And one of the best ways to really test that out is, in fact, by limiting your time, because you will start to see how many times you go to reach for your phone, right? Or if you just delete the apps off your phone and use them on your computer is another good tip. But when you delete the app at all, how many times you just automatically go to click on it and it's not there. And you're like, oh, right, because I'm taking a break. So again, somatically check in with it. And any questions, let me know.